coming in. So welcome again, everybody. Thank you for joining this afternoon's session. My name's Clive. I work down at Somerset Council. As well as doing that, I'm a member of the extended PPMA board. So you've got me for about 30 seconds, and I'll be handing over to far more interesting colleagues who will run through today's session. The title of which is on the screen. So hopefully you're all here for the missing piece of the talent and attraction and retention puzzle. And before we get started, those of you that have been to these sessions will have heard this so many times before. So apologies for sounding like a broken record, but a couple of the kind of housekeeping rules. You're all being incredibly well behaved by being on mute. If you can continue to do so throughout the session, that'll be really handy. The session is being recorded. You might spot that at the top of the screen. But only those that are speaking are shown, only the presenters are shown. So if you wanted to put your cameras on, that's absolutely fine. You won't be shown on the recording. Please do use the chat functionality. If you know Zoom and you can navigate to the chat, please do pose any questions into there. We've got quite a lot to get through. Rebecca's got tons to get through. So we might not be able to get to all questions today, but if not, we'll make sure we follow up and all questions will be responded to. So I'm delighted to hand over initially to Matt from Tribepad. I'll let Matt introduce himself and eventually over to Rebecca. So I'll stop wittering on and hand over to those guys to crack on with today's session. Thank you. Over to you, Matt.
That's great. Thanks for that, Clive. And welcome everybody. Really delighted to be with you today. I'm Matt Ingram-Smith. I'm part of the sales team at Tribepad. For those of you that know us, or for those of you that don't, I should say, we're a recruitment technology provider. We have been PPMA partners for a good couple of years now and really value our place in the PPMA roster. Another of our strategic partners is West Midlands Employers, and we're really delighted to be hosting Rebecca, the Chief Exec from WME, as we talk today about the missing piece of the talent attraction retention puzzle. I am going to fade into the background, much like Clive. I'm not following him, but I am going to fade into the background and leave you in the very capable hands of Rebecca. Having had a sneak peek of what's to come, I know there's some really exciting things in here. So take notes. Feel free to scribble down as we go through, because there's plenty of information. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks ever so much, Matt, and hello everyone. It is lovely to see you all this Friday lunchtime. I'm Rebecca Davis and I'm Chief Executive at West Midlands Employers, and I'm so proud to lead an organisation that delivers a range of innovative services across the councils in the West Midlands region. Now, this afternoon we've got 30 minutes and I'm going to try and give you some examples of what we do and some takeaways, more importantly, that you can use from today and things that you can access. We will be sending across the slides, and there's a series of QR codes which you can track and access those as I go through. Now, I'm happy to take any questions throughout, so if you do pop them into the chat box, Clive is going to pause if there's any pertinent points as I go along. Otherwise, I'll take anything else at the end of the session. But firstly, I'd like to thank Tribepad for inviting me to join them today and share some of what we're doing in the West Midlands region. Now, the first thing I want to do is to just tell you a little bit about who West Midlands Employers are. Whilst I hope you might have heard about us, we are niche really to the West Midlands region where we do most of our work, but we do also a lot of work nationally. We are owned by the 32 councils in the West Midlands region, and each of the 9 regions has an equivalent organisation as us. So you might be familiar with your regional employers organisation, London Councils, East of England's LGA, to name a couple of our sister organisations. But we're a great source of all things innovation and people services. So we are member-led. We're led by an elected member management board, and we deliver a range of services on behalf of our councils to drive innovation and work with strategic partners to further the people profession in our region and support the large local government workforce and wider public sector workforce. In 2023-24, we focused on being curious as an organisation and experimenting with ideas and inspiring meaningful change across our 32 councils. And I'm really excited that this year we were named in the Sunday Times Best Places to Work list for 2024, which is testament to the work really across the whole organisation to make sure we are not only preaching a great story for the sector, but also that we're doing what we practice and we are really embedding a great culture where we work. You can find more about what we do through our annual report and the QR codes on the screen. We recently relocated to the city centre in Birmingham, and our regional collaboration centre is becoming a hub of regional activity around all things people and development. So that's a little bit about what we do. But what I want to talk about today is our approach across the West Midlands region on talent attraction and retention. Now, the analogy we often use in the West Midlands is that collaboration really is the piece of that puzzle which makes the picture complete. It needs to connect into every other piece of your talent attraction strategy, and it needs to be something which grounds in internal and external collaboration. Through everything we do, we put a collaboration lens, and it is what I'm going to talk about today. Each of those pictures of our peace model, perception, insight, engagement, are all really important, and experience is probably the piece which comes last in the puzzle but has the biggest impact. So I'm going to talk about those in turn. And what we often see in our region is councils will focus on one particular piece of that puzzle. It might sit in different teams across the organisation, but it's not until you start joining it all together that you really see the full picture and can have that big impact in your organisation. There are many challenges in local government, but I really hope that this model that we use in the West Midlands is starting to address some of those challenges. Many of those challenges no one organisation could address in isolation. And if the one thing I ask you to take away from today is try and remember that peace model and see if it works within your council and within your organisation. So the first piece of that puzzle I'm going to talk about is collaboration. We've had some complex challenges within the sector that you will all be really familiar with around impact on recruitment and retention. Since COVID in 2020, where councils have fundamentally realigned the way they work, we found that there have been some significant skills gaps. They were struggling in our region with areas around environmental health, HGV drivers, planners, and a continual shortage of social workers. And we quickly found that councils were starting to compete against each other, and that was really not addressing the challenge, but it was also driving cost up. So we found that collaboration was absolutely essential, both internally and externally in those organisations. So in 2021, after the first tranche really of engagement with our councils, all 32 came together and we developed and launched the first local government workforce strategy for the region. Now, this was before the NHS launched their workforce strategy, and everyone got very excited and started saying, we need to have a national workforce strategy. We had already launched one within our region. It is something which all 32 councils are signed up to. And my take on this really is that I don't think local government can have a national strategy in a way which can really deliver meaningful change. It can have some high-level principles, but we are 370 sovereign councils in local government. We aren't the same as the NHS, and trying to pick and lift and shift what they've done for a sector which is completely independent employers is not as easy. So that's why we think having a regional strategy is one way we can make that collaboration work on a more localised level to really deliver transformation. So we launched the strategy in 2022, and you can access it via the QR code on the screen. And we are relaunching it in 2024 because we've already delivered much of what is within it. The workforce strategy is based on the principles of efficiency and delivering efficiency through what we do and how we attract staff, effectiveness and understanding about how the whole attraction system is linked to retention, and reaching an equilibrium where we stabilise the existing workforce and recognise there's no point having a great attraction strategy if you're hemorrhaging staff and you're not able to understand the links between your temporary and your permanent workforce and how they interrelate. Our strategy complements councils' local strategies, so it is something which is complementary, and it is something where councils can work towards and access a whole range of additional benefits by engaging with us through that. So please do have a read and see if there's any feedback you'd like to give us. So really my main takeaways when it comes to collaboration, the thing we found made the biggest difference was to really approach this in a similar way to how you would do shareholder mapping. So we did a priority matrix around collaboration, and we started to look at both the opportunities to collaborate against the resources required and the benefits of doing so, and how we could collaborate across the region and how councils could maximise those leverage points really to engage both internally with their key stakeholders, nationally and regionally. Don't forget about internal collaboration is another takeaway. How connected you are as a people team, as a HR team, as OD professionals, as recruiters is really important. How engaged are with you, your procurement teams, your comms and marketing teams, your manager network and your senior leadership team. All of these are crucial components on collaboration and need to be managed and have a strategy around them. Look at local collaboration, I would suggest. Look at where it's easier, where there's local political alignment, where you've got combined authority, where you've got district or county networks. I appreciate not every region it's feasible to do everything that we've done in the West Midlands, but there are opportunities to find your nearest neighbour, like-minded kindred spirits who are happy to participate in certain initiatives. Regional opportunities are absolutely great, so I would always encourage you to go and speak to one of your sister organisations of West Midlands Employers, your regional employers organisation, and also national collaboration, organisations like the PPMA, the LGA, CIPD, who are all active in really helping further opportunities to collaborate, because that really is the future, and especially as resources are becoming particularly tight, we are finding that collaboration is the only way we can get things done. So now I'm going to quickly move on to talk about some of the other pieces of our puzzle which link to collaboration and what we've done. So insights, absolutely valuable, and I'm sure is something that you are all working on in your organisations. The biggest piece for us around insights was ensuring that we had benchmark data. We needed to understand how councils were performing against each other and nationally, what some of those trends are on the workforce. One of the things I found coming into the sector was the lack of insight we have about the whole local government workforce. We just don't understand enough about what people working in local government want, do, feel, act, and that is a real to our detriment and an opportunity in the same instance. So what I'm really pleased about is for the first time this year, we have worked with stakeholders nationally, and we've launched the Local Government Workforce Board and the Local Government Workforce Hub. Now, this offers a data platform to councils to be able to input a series of standardised metrics and KPIs around your workforce that will allow you to report on that, to benchmark that, and be able to really drill down different insights about your local area and your partnerships of councils. It's absolutely brilliant tool. It's available now, and I'd encourage you to access that by contacting your local regional employers organisation, who hopefully have already shared some of that information with you. But some of the examples we've been able to do because of insight are really driving our strategy. And what I've been really proud about this year is that every single decision we've taken, every investment we've made as a region has been driven by insight. So we launched a regional agency framework, which was about reducing agency spend. And so far we have 8 councils using that framework with a £7 million forecast saving over the next 4 years. And we're going to be doing a PPMA webinar on that on the 14th of October, because that is a huge initiative, but it is all grounded in data and insights from our councils around agency spend. Because we've got such data-rich insights across our workforce in the region, councils have committed £100,000 per year to a workforce priorities fund every year. So within that workforce priorities fund, we are then able to invest in initiatives which address challenges those data insights highlight for us. So everything I'm going to talk about now has come from their workforce priorities fund seed funding. So we developed an inclusive recruitment toolkit, and I'll be able to share the QR code for that in a minute. But it's an interactive tool which allows you to audit where you are in your recruitment processes based against best practice industry standards around recruitment. There's some interactive videos, talks, materials. It's a full toolkit and it's really immersive experience using it. We've piloted that with councils in our region and it's really positive, helping councils to make the changes yourself without having to bring in external consultancies to be able to do that. Much of it is grounded in evidence, grounded in theory. So again, that was based on the data and insights report we did, which was on the spotlight on inclusion and highlighted some particular challenges around recruitment practices. The fourth area is around our children's memorandum of understanding onto children's social work. We're driving huge service improvements across our region. 14-month period, we had 197 breaches of our agency MOU. Because we were tracking it, we were able to address those at the point those breaches happened. We resolved 98% of those. And what I'm really pleased about is that for a 10-month period, we've converted 144 agency workers in social work to permanent employees. And again, all of that is because we are tracking and using data-driven benchmark tools. So all of these are things which you'll be able to do in collaboration with others with data and insights. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how much data we've got access to and how we're using that, just to give you a flavour of what we do. This year, we launched our first recruitment and workforce insight report. And again, there's a QR code on the screen that you can access there. And some of the insights this gave us are that across councils in our region, across all 32, we have a 9% vacancy rate, which is considerably higher than other industries. As a benchmark, the NHS traditionally has a 7% agency rate in non-clinical roles. So you can see local government, we've got a real finite skills gap challenge there. So that is something which we have actively invested in addressing with some of our recruitment campaigns that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So 57% of our council workforce is aged over 46 across all 32 councils as an average, which demonstrates we have a huge problem on the horizon, and not that far on the horizon, about an ageing workforce. We have 10% of the whole UK population living in the West Midlands, and 21% of that population are students or studying, yet our councils do not have enough entry-level roles for those students. So we already know we've got an ageing workforce, yet our talent pipeline is not robust enough to cater for what is a big gap. We also know from our data analysis that there's a huge bulge in the 18-year-old population over the next few years, which possibly will not be seen again in the rest of the century. We've had 715,000 18-year-olds in 2020. And for the Office of National Statistics, we know that is anticipated to rise to 893,000 in our region in 2030, which is a 25% increase in that younger population. So again, we've got a huge gap there about where we've got opportunities to fill vacancies with 18-year-olds. So it's such an important window of time that we have to prepare and change our workforce for how we bring people into the sector. We found that only 35% of our applicants to jobs in the West Midlands are under 35, which is a huge gap. So we've got an ageing workforce and we're just bringing in more of that demographic. So all of this insight is what is driving our strategy and the approaches that we're taking over the next few years. And I just wanted to give you a flavour really of how we're using that data and how powerful that is when we're talking to elected members and we're talking to chief executives about investing and where they invest their money. So I'm just going to stop here and talk a little bit about how we drill that data down a bit further and examples of how the systems which our councils use allow them to be data rich. So our new applicant tracking system, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about shortly, is a system where 14 of our councils are now using a single platform with Tribepad and giving them comparable access to data. I'm going to ask Matt here to say a few words about how that enables really decision making about very discrete policy areas.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rebecca. I think the key here, and we've seen it throughout those last two slides that Rebecca has shared, is that it's the intent that really matters. So a lot of organizations can fall into a trap of looking at data to work out what they need to do next. And of course, that can be useful, but actually what's been really clear from the whole of the WME approach is they have had really clear objectives and have aligned the data that's been captured to those objectives. And that means that they can then report meaningfully and enact change. So I think our part to play in this has been really incredibly simple. We have listened, we've responded to the needs that WME have had. And it's just about providing avenues for them to capture the right data so that they can tell the stories they need to. So yeah, if I can just offer anything, it's just an endorsement of that idea that setting really clear objectives is the way to harness the data that you have, because you can have all of the information in the world. That's not going to help you make any decisions or tell meaningful stories. Having really clear objectives for that data is.
Thanks, Matt. So just a few of the takeaways really when it comes to insights. A few documents here which you'll be able to access, particularly our inclusive recruitment toolkit. There is the report from Tripad, Stop the Bias report. Again, a great report which looks at inclusive recruitment. And please do talk to your local regional employers organisation about how you can access the National Data Hub and Board. So I'm going to quickly move on now to talk about perception, which is another really important piece of our puzzle. 15 years ago, councils in the West Midlands created the WM Jobs Board. You can have a look at that at www.wmjobs.co.uk. This site is a local government recruitment site for our region, and it has grown over the past 15 years quite exponentially. We advertise roles now for over 450 public sector and voluntary organisations in the West Midlands region. This year alone, we advertised 28,000 jobs, had 6.9 million views of the site. We've got 2.3 million active job users. We sent out 112,000 job alerts to candidates, 30.5 million email alerts, and had 2.4 million social media impressions. So there is huge interest in local government jobs out there. But what we need to do more of is to run perception campaigns. So we often talk about attraction campaigns, but what we are finding, and the data and insights are telling us, we need to reach a younger demographic. We need to bring new people in to the sector. So we collaborated with our councils on a perception campaign. We know we're not the most attractive employer out there. We don't offer the biggest bonuses. We don't offer the biggest reward packages, but there are lots of things about working in local government which is absolutely fantastic. And we needed to start changing some of those perceptions. So we collaborated to come up with a really bold campaign, a campaign which doesn't mention councils at all, doesn't mention local government one bit. And that was quite a striking approach for our organisations to get on board with and to sell that concept into their organisations. We worked with a creative agency and our jobsters were born. You can see examples of our jobsters on the screen there. We had a really clear objective about raising awareness of local government careers and bringing young people into the sector through our apprenticeship campaigns. Now, these campaigns were locally driven. We produced creative assets, including social media cards, animations, posters, postcards, and we tapped into all 32 councils' reach and their ability to get assets out into their community. We then ran a region-wide campaign with digital and physical advertising, and we found that councils could maximise their reach by doing this together and not advertising individual jobs. We paid for social media and programmatic advertising across Google AdWords, and we had physical adverts across shopping centres, metro stops, train stations, you name it, our jobsters were out there. The campaign saw us have an 18% increase in active users, and what's more important, a 30% increase in click-through applies now, and we've had a huge success with it. Our Summer of Sport Jobster campaign launched last week, so you can see that across the region as and when you're out and about. But what I would say is collaborating around changing perceptions in local government is really important. So work with neighbouring councils or through your employer's organisation. Focus on starting small, but measure your impact. It's important to know what makes a big difference so that every pound you spend can be spent with purpose. At a regional, sub-regional level, if you can create a jobs board, it's a long-term investment, but it really does deliver benefits, especially when you look at that Gen Alpha, which are coming through, who have been using technology since nursery school. They are going to be brought into everything online, and driving traffic is only going to become more important. There's also the national work that the LGA are doing in this space. So just to plug that, if you need to tap into resources, they're a great asset to use as well. So I'm just going to very quickly move on to talk around engagement here, and particularly our work with Tribepad. Now, across our region, our collaboration extended to working with our councils to procure and implement a single ATS system. Now, what I will say is many councils settle for using their HR system as their applicant tracking system. Please don't. If you do anything, fight to get a bespoke applicant tracking system, because it does far more than your HR system will ever be able to do. In our region, 14 of our councils migrated from a legacy ATS system in 2 tribes earlier this year in just under 6 months, on time and in budget, with Tribepad. A real big achievement to get them all using the new system. It is absolutely fantastic. We've got Oxfordshire County Council and Worcestershire County Council in Tribe 3 onboarding as we speak. We've seen huge impact through this. We've had an increase in applications per job on 27%. Imagine getting 27% more quality applicants through. It's absolutely fantastic. Time to offer has been reduced from 27 days to 6 days in some councils, using a streamlined recruitment process. We've had over 60,000 applications through the system. We've provided over 1,400 interviews through the system, and we've made over 1,000 offers through the system in just 3 months. We are forecast to save 895,000 in cost saving over 4 years, which again, huge impact for councils taking time out of their recruitment systems and processes. We've got a clear roadmap of service improvements and how we want to make those. And our councils collaborate in a tribe, which is led by the fantastic Katrina Whitby in our team, who works with them to help continue to develop, improve. Collaboration is at the heart of that system development. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to move on to our takeaways. I would say absolutely review your current ATS system. Your current IT around recruitment and attraction is vital, but do this with the future in mind. And I'm going to signpost you to an article from one of our team, Michelle O'Neill, which was in the Municipal Journal this week. And she talks about Gen Alpha, and everything has to be gearing up really for what we want to do for the future. You are on a runway at the moment. Think of it like that. You're coming in and you need to take off for the new workplace of the future. So start building that runway now. There's no point having an ATS which doesn't give you scope to grow, scope to collaborate. Second point, form a partnership wherever you can. Do it in collaboration. The more people you've got inputting into your system improvements, the better. And improve processes by engaging your managers, recruiters, your candidate input, everything you can. Just focus on that future vision of the workplace. So I'm going to move on to the final piece of our puzzle really, which is around experience. And I say this has 2 hats to it: candidate experience and experienced recruiters. Same word, very different meanings, but both are interlinked. The employee and recruiter experience is absolutely important to make sure candidates have a brilliant experience from the moment they decide to apply for your vacancy, right through their onboarding process, and then their time in the organisation. All of it needs to be aligned. We know that recruiters are a real asset in organisations. They have to have a really highly defined skill set. No longer can recruitment be seen as an administrative task in HR teams. Our councils in the region recognise that, with 75% of the candidate market passive. We need to give people the skills, the tools, the ability to become professional recruiters. So we developed 2 recruitment programmes: the Recruitment 101, aimed at giving people the basics and an entry-level qualification, and the Modern Day Recruiter Masterclass, which was aimed at senior resourcing leads and covered things around AI, ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, data-driven insights, everything about the future of recruitment. We're upskilling our recruiters because we know experienced recruiters mean that your candidate experience is better. Your candidate's experience through that process is top-notch and comparable with the private sector. So the 2 are absolutely interlinked. There's some key takeaways really I'd give you there. You can please access our programs that are available. There is a national program which is about the People Professionals Academy, which is a wider HR program but has recruitment components in it. Again, all about building professionalism in the sector. Networking opportunities, absolutely fabulous. Any chance you can to network and engage on recruitment is really important. And engaging with professional bodies such as the PPMA, LGA and CIPD will just help your teams and your recruiters progress. So really that brings me into my final slide, and it's been a really quick run through, and I could have done a webinar on each of those pieces in detail. But what I will say is be bold, look to the future, and I hope you remember our approach from the West Midlands. I'm very happy to connect with any of you on social media to talk through any of this in more depth outside of this webinar. But thank you ever so much for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Absolutely superb. Thank you ever so much for that, Rebecca. I'd scribbled down perhaps a webinar on each piece of the piece, to be honest. And you've just said that exactly thing. The other thing I scribbled down was I'm glad collaboration and experience are on there, else we'd have had the pie model, which probably doesn't quite work quite as nicely as the piece model, does it? And we have had some questions. We are kind of just over time, but let's sneak the first one in and see how we're getting on. And if we can't get to the others, we'll come back to Pauline and Lee on those ones. But Pauline's first question was how much comparability of pay across different authorities has that been an issue for the sector in trying to work collaboratively in the West Midlands, for example, to avoid pay competition and poaching of staff from one another?
Yeah, it is, and it's really important, I think, in terms of local government pay, has a lot of different factors to it. It is a lever which we recognise, as much as councils like to pull that lever and then try and offer golden hellos, bonus payments, that doesn't really drive what we're finding from data about why people come to work in the public sector. So we need to pull different levers really that are available to us and make sure that that lever on pay we are mindful of and we benchmark against, but we don't try and use it to compete with other councils. So within the West Midlands region, we've got our memorandum of understanding around children's agency workforce. We're also working with our partners in ADAS with around adult services around, do we consider some of those roles could be applicable for a memorandum of understanding as well, just to help put a ceiling in there to avoid competition, because the only winners are agencies in that marketplace. And where we've got competition, particularly around councils in high skill roles such as planners, environmental health, what we try and do is to collaborate and say, let's find a way which actually builds a bigger pool of talent in the future, where we actually bring talent from different parts of the sector, where we look at squiggly careers and how people can use skills and transfer in, rather than trying to say, let's just look at working with councils to inflate costs in one area, because it doesn't solve the problem. It just moves the problem around. So it is something which councils do, unfortunately, but it is something that we've, certainly from a regional employers perspective, tried to discourage and worked really hard to pull different levers.
Brilliant answer. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Grace will tell me off for posing another question, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'll have the wrath of Grace after this, but it's a short, hopefully a short and sweet one. These could be famous last words, but Lee asks, what would you recommend as the top 3 actions or quick wins, tips that we can take when recruiting for roles with skill shortages, such as social workers, occupational therapists, ed psychologists, all the ones that probably councils up and down the land have issues with recruiting? What would make kind of our strategy stand out in addition to what you've spoken about already?
Yeah, I think for me it would be understanding what social workers, for example, in your organisation value, and make it local, ground it in your organisation and your communities. Because if they're working there, they need to understand what it is that's attracting them in. So go for localised, tailored approach. Look at what you can be where you're honest, and start that conversation with social workers early. You know, start being really honest about what it's like to work there. Don't promise something that you can't deliver in that recruitment campaign. There's nothing worse than say, oh, you'll have a light caseload here, and then they come in and they've got 30 cases on day one. You know, you really need to have that honest conversation. And thirdly, I'd say speed, which means your processes need to be slick, particularly for roles where there's a high assurance level required in that process. You can't cut corners, but you need to make sure that the handoffs are smooth, they're slick, and you're keeping those candidates engaged throughout, because you'll know yourself, you very rarely sit back anymore and expect something to take more than a couple of days. You know, I sent my passport form off, I used the online form, it came back within a week as a renewal. that's the kind of speed people expect. The idea of waiting 30 days to get your contract through in a new job just isn't there anymore. So we have to speed up our processes wherever we can.
Smashing. Thank you ever so much, Rebecca. There is another question. It's a meaty one though, so we might have to come back to you, Pauline, on that one another time. So thank you ever so much. We have gone over, so apologies for chairing fairly badly there. Final bits from me then. Thank you ever so much to both Matt and Rebecca for that really, really insightful. I can't wait to get my hands on the slides and use all those QR codes. So I'm sure we can all take loads and loads from that. So thanks both for giving up your time this afternoon. I think the final thing to mention is keep your eyes peeled for other webinars. Rebecca even mentioned one during the session. I think it's on the 14th of October. We'll have West Midlands Employers back on another PPMA webinar, but there'll be plenty before then as well. So please do keep your eyes peeled for more interesting topics soon. Share with your networks, and let's grow these suite of webinars even more. Thanks everybody. Have a fantastic weekend when it arrives, and keep an eye out for this recording and the slides, which will be with you relatively soon. Thanks everybody. Cheers. Bye bye.